Hello again, I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Thank you for joining me today as we continue in our series of honoring veterans here in the Enid area. My very special guest today is Captain Craig Vance. And Craig is a graduate of Enid High School, and he's also a graduate of Southwestern Oklahoma State University. He was commissioned in the United States Navy back in 1973 and achieved the rank of captain in 1995. I'd like to share with you just bits and pieces of his extensive bio, because it's just something you don't want to overlook. During his career, he served on numerous ships in the Atlantic Fleet, was commanding officer of the USS Elmer Montgomery, and was Assistant Chief of Staff Operations for Commander, Cruiser Destroyer Group 2, George Washington Battle Group. Craig served in several shore assignments, including on the staffs of the Chief of Naval Operations and Commander, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, where he was Director, Joint and Fleet Training. During his service, he earned a Master of Science degree from the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School and federal certifications as Chief Information Officer, an information security professional from the National Defense University. Craig retired from the Navy in 2001 after 30 years in service, and closer to home, in 2014, Craig Vance received the Enid High Pride of the Plainsman Award. So would you join me in welcome Captain Craig Vance, or Craig, to the ETN studios. Craig, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Steve.
First off, thank you for your service to our great country.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. So we have a lot to talk about today, so thanks for stopping by. Well, let's go let's go back to the beginning. I'm curious, being from small town Oklahoma, Perry for me, I'm curious, what role did being brought up in Enid, going to Enid High School, the Oklahoma standard, if you will, how did that kind of prepare you for this life of achievements? Because when we see your bio, you've done numerous things. Surely Enid, Oklahoma played a role in that, besides your parents?
Well, I think just the culture of self-reliance of the Oklahoma people. Great-grandparents made the land run, came down with almost nothing.
Yeah.
And built a life out of it. Watched my grandfather and my uncles make a success out of farming. Most of them had served in World War II, so there was the service aspect of it there. Self-reliance of the individual citizen here in Oklahoma was probably the key to where my success came from. I didn't wait around for somebody else to do something for me. If there was something that I thought needed to be done, I just went out and did it.
Right. As I would tell people that growing up in Perry and hauling hay, that was very character building.
Yeah, top of a tin barn in July, absolutely.
Or August. And I always said that was very character building, and it always reminded me, Steve, there's more things in life a little bit better than this, so get busy doing those other things.
Yeah, when I was chief engineer on a 1,200-pound steam destroyer, and in front of those boilers, it was hot. Yeah. But I'd go down there and the guys would be complaining, and I'd just tell them, you really don't know what hot is.
That's true. Well, Craig, let's talk a little bit about the military background. I've noticed that you had earned, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star with Combat V, National Defense Medal, commander of numerous ships. So tell us a little bit about your service in the Navy. You mentioned before we went on the air here a little bit about the transition. So if you will, just kind of lead us through your Navy career and some of the things that you experienced and really the transition of the Navy.
Yeah, from 73 when I went in to 01, it was really a time of transition within the Navy. World War II ships were going out of service. Predominantly we were steam propulsion at that time, but over the course of the years, the gas turbine propulsion came in. We had some nuclear-powered surface combatants other than the aircraft carriers, and I served on one of the nuclear-powered cruisers for a couple of years. So that transition was going on, changing from a gun as the main battery of those ships to missile power, and extending the longer range. Radar technology was rapidly improving, and then the internet and interconnectivity between ships, rapidly changing or exchanging information between ships and shore commands, and so a lot of changes going on technologically. And then in the early 70s, there was the racial unrest in the United States, and the Navy did not escape that. There was some black-white conflict in the early 70s, and we had to get together and try to hash out on individual ships a lot of those issues. And then as we moved into the 80s and early 90s, it was the women coming into the services and women on ships, and there was that perturbations. And then tailhook in the early 90s that made the big shift towards it. And then shortly after that, we had the don't ask, don't tell policy brought down from the White House, and we had to learn how to adjust to that. And so there was a lot of changes that went on in that 30 years.
Of all the things that you mentioned, you would think that'd be a 100-year time period, but that was all squeezed into 30 years.
Yeah, and what it was, Truman integrated the services in 48. And here it was from 1948, and in 73 we were still really dealing with the root causes of those instabilities and the differonces in the culture and how we treated each other, and so that was quite a long span in which to deal with that. And we turned around and we started introducing the women into the Navy, and so instead of 48 to 73, now we're talking 73 or the late 70s into the early 80s. So it's a much more compact time frame in which the Navy has to adjust to these social changes. And then the don't ask, don't tell, you had an even shorter time frame. And changing people and their attitudes to adjust to these social changes that's going on around them throughout the world, trying to deal with that in a shorter and shorter and shorter time frame. Just like computer development, every year something new and something better comes along. That technology, that's easy to adjust to. Socially, it's not. And I think we're better now. The services are certainly better at it, at making those adjustments socially and culturally. And we're better for it coming out the back end. Don't get me wrong. But the adjustment period, you can't just make an edict somewhere in Washington and say, okay, all you guys play well together. It doesn't work that way.
It may come out together, but again, I think sometimes the growing pains kind of hurts, but
it hurts.
The end result gets there.
You just have to keep thinking how good it's going to feel when it quits hurting.
My special guest today here, as we feature veterans here in the Enid area, is Captain Craig Vance, who served 30 years in the Navy. Craig, we'll get back to the military career in just a moment, but you continued your career about giving back, because here you graduate from Enid High School in 1969. You moved back to the Enid area in 2003, and then you kind of started another career of giving back, because I want to share with our viewers some of the things that you've been involved in since you came back to the Enid. The Vance Air Force Base Development Authority, Northwest Oklahoma Regional Heritage Center Task Force, also the Enid Park Board, the Public School Director, District Board Member, I should say, and the Archive Working Group Chairman. And that's just a list of the few things that Craig has been involved in. So, kind of a twofold question: why the civic involvement? And did you know way back in 1969 you were going to be coming back full circle to Enid and devote your life to giving back?
Well, let me answer that second question first. Is when I left the first weekend in 1973, took my wife and headed for Newport, Rhode Island. I honestly didn't think I'd ever come back to live in Enid again. And it was 30 years to the weekend, the first weekend of August 2003, when we made the move back here. My mom's health was failing, and just felt it was the right thing to do to come back to Enid at that time. It was a couple years into that I decided I needed to do something in the community. There were things that I'd been exposed to civically in other areas where I'd lived. I'd been on one of my daughter's schools was going through some issues, and I was on a board there. When I retired, we were in Chesapeake, Virginia at the time, and I was on the Mayor's Commission for Veterans Affairs there, and I just thought it was important to help the communities in which you live with whatever talents you have. My last years in the Navy had been in administrative positions, looking at big picture items and making improvements in different areas.
Sure.
And I thought I could contribute to the community in those ways. The school board, a member in my ward resigned. Don't remember exactly the circumstance. I think they moved. And so I told them, I said, if you can't find anybody else that wants to do it, I'd be happy to serve on the school board. So they appointed me. And I was only on there for a year because at that point I was going to be moving out of the district. And so I didn't run for another term. But it's just important if you have talent and you have time, and I understand a lot of people don't have time, but I did, so I thought I'd use my talents, whatever they were, wherever I thought they might apply.
And I think we can take that as a word of encouragement to everyone, that if you have the expertise, and again, the time, as Craig said, there are numerous opportunities out in the community for people to give back.
There are organizations, and there's always advertisements. The city's got board positions open, and I read in the paper letters to the editor that lambasting the city for doing this or doing that or doing something else. Well, get off your duff and go in and make your 2 cents known at the appropriate place and get in there and help yourself.
Yeah. He said get off your duff, not me. Okay. I'm just Craig, as preparing for this interview, and I was looking at your resume and also really your bio of things that you were involved in, I noticed that you were the keynote speaker at one time at the Wood Ring Wall of Honor. That leads into my question. Would you just, if you would, I've asked different veterans this particular question, if you'd kind of speak from your heart, why the importance to you personally in celebrating Memorial Day?
It's twofold. One's history. If people forget history, you're doomed to repeat. And Memorial Day was created after the Civil War to honor the dead. Back then, most soldiers were buried where they fell, never repatriated to their hometown like we do today. And so people throughout the country, mostly in the South it started, on Memorial Day, it used to be Decoration Day. They would go out and decorate the graves of the soldiers. And now I find that most people don't know those roots of Memorial Day, the real meaning of honoring the fallen soldiers. Now it's just go out and decorate Grandma and Grandpa's grave or Mom and Dad's, and the military connection, those that sacrificed their lives for the cause, whatever the cause was at the time. And so it's served in the military, served with people. I lost a close friend in 9/11 at the Pentagon. So it has meaning to the servicemen for the original purpose of Memorial Day.
Sure, very good. I appreciate you speaking from the heart on that topic. Our special guest today is Captain Craig Vance, known as Craig, here at the Enid Television Network studio, and he's our special feature in our veteran programs that we've been airing here on ETN. Craig's been involved with the DAV, and we want to talk about that in a few moments, but let's take this short break, and we'll be back with Craig Vance right after this. Thank you for staying with us today in our special edition of honoring our veterans here in the Enid area. A very special guest today is Craig Vance. Craig, we talked earlier before the break about the significance of Memorial Day, and let's move down the calendar for a little bit in regards to November 11th, Veterans Day. As a veteran, 30 years in the Navy, and family members, and my dad served in World War II in the Navy as well. The significance of Veterans Day to you as a veteran, what does that mean?
Well, as Memorial Day was to commemorate those soldiers that died in battle.
Right.
Where Veterans Day is the day we remember the veterans themselves, the active service, be it active or the National Guard or the reservist, those people that are serving now and have served in the past but are still alive. And so this is their day, and so that's the difference between the two. But it's always great to go out and just see somebody in uniform at the airport or at a restaurant, and just go up there and thanks for your service. That's all that's required. It's not even required, but it's a nice thing to do, and the veterans appreciate it.
Talking about appreciation, the other day I was having breakfast with the World War II vet, and just a close special friend, and another gentleman in his fatigues, if you will. We were finishing our breakfast, and this gentleman came across the room and talked to us for just a moment, and realized that my special friend was a World War II vet. Anyway, he reached down and grabbed our ticket. And he turned to my friend, and he just simply said, "Sir, thank you for your service. I'm buying breakfast today."
Yep.
And that's kind of what it's all about, honoring, taking time to recognize and appreciate veterans. And that was such a moving time for me. I've heard of those stories, I've heard of those situations, but I got a front row center to see that kindness, if you will, and honoring of another veteran take place. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I had that. When I was in uniforms, a couple of times people picked up my ticket, and I've carried it on now. I was at the airport, and there was a young lady in her uniform in line at McDonald's at the airport, and I just went up and said, "Your money's no good here," and just pick it up.
Yeah.
And talk about a feel good. It was really more for me than for her, because it's just a feel good to pay it back, pay it forward, but recognize the sacrifices that the people in the service are making.
Let's talk about another topic that's near and dear to your heart, and that's the DAV, Disabled American Veterans, established, I believe, in 1920. First off, Craig, tell our viewers the role of DAV.
DAV is a veteran service organization. It's one of the big three within the community. You got the Legion, you got the VFW, and you got the DAV. And there's a lot of others that are out there to promote veterans' causes. DAV, everybody has, each one has their own little niche membership role, and ours is any service member that was on active duty and was ill or injured or even gassed. We were created right after World War I, and a lot of veterans had been gassed, so that's in our charter. So that's kind of our clientele. We provide free services for any veteran or their family members and we advocate and assist them in obtaining those state and federal veterans benefits that they earn through their service to our country.
On a personal note, you're serving now as commander of the Oklahoma division or chapter of DAV?
Past commander, state commander.
Okay. And your role in that commander role was what?
Well, we have about 19,000 DAV members in Oklahoma.
Okay.
We represented those at the state level to the legislature. We do promote veteran-friendly legislation. Each year we put forth some proposals. Some of the successes we've had statewide, the sales tax exemption for 100% disabled veterans. We were part and parcel of getting that through the legislature, as well as some of the other. And Oklahoma has a good veterans package, better than most other states. But we're still working to improve those benefits.
Speaking of benefits, let's move our topic along the lines of being an advocate for veterans' benefits and legislative issues. Since you are that advocate, why don't you just tell our viewers, in your opinion, what are the issues that need to be addressed and that you're helping to address?
Well, one of the major issues nationally, this is federal legislation, is the post 9/11 caregivers. If you've got a veteran that had catastrophic injuries and needs a full-time caregiver, in most cases it's the spouse,
right,
or it could be the parent, and that caregiver gives up a lot. They can't be employed because they're a full-time caregiver. So post 9/11, Congress passed legislation giving the Department of Veterans Affairs the authority to create a program to educate the caregivers, to provide them a money stipend, provide them mental health care, because it's very stressful providing full-time care to an individual, and provide bring somebody in from the outside, a caregiver, to give a vacation to that primary caregiver so they can get away from it,
sure,
de-stress.
Sure.
But those veterans, catastrophic disabled veterans before 9/11, they weren't eligible for that program. And so one of our big thrusts now is make the same program available to those veterans pre-9/11 as post-9/11. We're stressing women veteran issues. There are a lot of VA medical facilities that don't have an OBGYN, for instance, or don't have a women's clinic. And, men and women are physically different. They have different medical demands. The VA was set up when it was an all-male military,
sure,
and it's slow to adjust. And about 18 to 20% of our military population are females now. We've got to adapt to that, and it takes congressional action to make that stuff happen.
I sincerely appreciate you bringing the issues to light, because it's really easy to take things for granted or just assume things are in good shape. But here you raise just the awareness of the fact of not having the services available for the women, and just raising the awareness that didn't even give that any thought, but yet it's important to raise those issues and to be an advocate for those issues. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your role with the DAV and what you do for our veterans. We've got one more question that we want to ask Craig Vance in just a moment, and it's going to kind of summarize our visit today. Being a history buff and just a wealth of information, I know we could go much longer, but we've got one more question for Craig, and we're going to do that right after this. Welcome back to our final segment today with my very special guest, Craig Vance. Craig, before the break, we were talking a little bit about Disabled American Veterans Association or group, the DAV, as people know. Tell us quickly, how are you funded? Because it takes resources to do what you do and to advocate for legislative issues and just to take care of veterans. So how can a person help, and how are you funded?
We are funded strictly through donations. We receive no money from any governmental agency.
Okay.
We are a 501c4 tax-exempt nonprofit organization.
Okay.
And we're always need the coin coming in the bucket to help us provide our free services to veterans. We help veterans fill out their claims for benefits that they earned through their service. You see our DAV van taking veterans to their medical appointments. Disaster aid, we've been in 56 different disaster situations in Oklahoma since 2011, and that all takes money, and it's the donor, it's the citizen that writes us the check, comes to the fundraisers, and on Veterans Day and in Veterans Week, a lot of restaurants provide donation opportunities for veterans, and so I hope the citizens of Enid, they've been generous in the past. I hope they continue to be generous, because our chapter here in Enid, if it's west of I-35 and north of I-40, that's our territory, and it takes money to get out to those veterans and help them.
That's a big neighborhood. So keep that in mind, as Craig had mentioned, throughout the year there'll be fundraisers, but there are particular restaurants that offer the opportunities for you to give substantially to the DAV. So keep that in mind throughout the year when you hear of these opportunities to give, since they are a 501c4, they would accept a big check.
Absolutely. And our office is in the old Santa Fe Depot, 202 West Walnut. We're open Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, 9 to 1, or by appointment.
Very good. Craig, I really appreciate your time today, and we've got to close out our segment and our visit. You're certainly welcome to come back, and we can talk certainly a lot more about these issues today. But as we close the show out, there's a good chance that I've learned this, that there's a young person watching this interview. Could be late night, early morning, sometime, weekend, but they're watching this, and they see this individual who gave 30 years of their life to service to our great country in the Navy, graduated high school, came back to the community, was given back in a civic way by contributing on boards and serving that way. So for that young person that's watching and considering maybe going to college or university, but they're also considering a career in the military, what word of encouragement or guidance would you give them?
Take advantage of your education now, be it at the high school level, be it at the vocational technical level, be it at college level. Educate yourself in technical areas, social history, but get an education, learn what's going on around you, and not just immediately around you. See what's going on around the world. Educate yourself to it, and if you want to go in the military, which I highly encourage it's not for everybody, certainly. It's not for everybody, but it's a good life. You will learn a lot. You will join the Navy, see the world is absolutely true in my case, and in most cases. And it can be, even if it's a 4-year, one tour, or a 20, 30-year career, it's good life. And you learn a lot, and for the 18-year-old coming out of high school that doesn't know what they want to do in life, it's a good springboard, because you will be exposed to people from all over, and you might find your vocation while you're serving the country.
Very good. Well said. Captain, thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I've enjoyed it.
Very good. Thank you. Craig Vance, our special guest today, as we highlight veterans here in the Enid area. Thank you for joining us. This is Steve Kime with the City of Enid. I look forward to visiting with you again. We'll have another special guest as we honor our veterans year-round here at the Enid Television Network. Until next time, make it a great day.